السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. Hopefully it's clear to everyone. Um, so inshallah today we have our second session of our fiqh of Hajj and Umrah. Last week was kind of like an introduction. We just briefly talked about the virtues of Hajj, um, the virtues of Umrah. We ask Allah that whoever Allah has accepted to go for Hajj this year, that Allah accept your Hajj and that He allow you to benefit from all of its virtues. And those that are going for Umrah, that Allah accept your Umrah as well, and that He give all of us the ability to go for Hajj and Umrah. Ameen, Ya Rabbil Alameen. So last week we talked about some of the virtues, um, and then we kind of went over some of the intros. Just to recap, we mentioned that, for example, Hajj is done on certain days throughout the year, as we know. We mentioned that Umrah can be performed at any point throughout the year. Um, I just want to start back off from here, the types of Hajj, just to review, because this will directly apply to what we're talking about today. So we mentioned that Hajj is of three types. The first is Ifrad. The name is not that important. It's important that you know the description, right? So the first type of Hajj is when you're only doing Hajj. There is no connection with the Umrah at all. So you're only going and doing Hajj and then coming back, right? This is generally done by locals and generally done by countries or people from countries that are neighboring Saudi, or if not neighboring, but close to the country. This is generally done. Now, are there people that sometimes they can do Ifrad Hajj from here? Yes, there are situations, but it's rare. Mostly people from here, they do the third one, as we will go over. The second is Qiran. We mentioned that Qiran is when you do Umrah and you do Hajj. However, you do both of them with one Ihram, meaning that you wear Ihram once, you do the Umrah, and then you don't get out of Ihram. You stay in the state of Ihram and then you start Hajj. This is also a type of Hajj that is done, usually not from here, but again, countries that are closer, they usually do that. They'll go maybe a day before Hajj starts. They'll just go there, they'll do Umrah the day before, and the next day they'll start the actions of Hajj. The third one is Tamattu, and this is the one that we're going to focus on because this is the most commonly done, especially from here. Um, and Tamattu is when you perform Umrah and then you get out of ihram, you get out of the state of ihram, you finish of ihram, then you remain normal, as if you're there normally for maybe a couple of days, a day, 2, 3 days, whatever the schedule is like. And then afterwards, when you're starting Hajj again, you get back into the state of ihram, and then you do Hajj a few days. So hypothetically, let's just say Hajj starts on the 8th of the Hijjah. Let's just say a person who goes to Makkah on the 3rd, 5 days before. You're not going to stay in Ihram 5 days before Hajj even starts. So what does a person do? They'll get into Makkah, they'll perform Umrah, as we'll talk about. They finish Umrah, they get out of Ihram. Then for day 4, day 5, day 6, day 7, they're dressed normally. Um, Generally speaking, they're allowed to do the normal acts, generally speaking, as they would have done. And then on the 8th they start Hajj. They get to the state of ihram, and for that sacrifice is required. So that third one, as we mentioned, is the one that we will be talking about, right? And as we're talking about the third one, Umrah is covered as well. So even if you're not going for Hajj, you just planning on going to Umrah, for example, this is will be talked about because this part of this type of Hajj is Umrah as well, inshallah. So this is the three types of Hajj: Ifrad, Qiran, Tamattu. So that's something that we went over, just reviewing. We briefly talked about what to take last week, just to quickly refresh ourselves. Ihram garments for men. We mentioned that taking multiple sets of the garments is good, just in case the garment gets soiled or anything happens and you need to change out of it. To take comfortable sandals and slippers, we said that that's very important. Not necessarily new sandals or slippers, but something that you're comfortable walking in. And perhaps you can take a couple of pairs or a few, 2, 3 pairs, that'll be good. We talked about anti-chafing, gelling and gel and cream, Vaseline, these type of things because it gets dry. Taking a drawstring bag, those bags that you carry on your back, that's very important to carry your shoes and other belongings. Safety pins, sunglasses, small backpacking sleeping mat for Hajj, which is generally provided by the group, but it may be good just to take anyways. And one thing I forgot to mention, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, as a reminder for all of us, He says, وَتَزَوَّدُوا, prepare yourself, but فَإِنَّ خَيْرَ الزَّادِ التَّقْوَى. The best provision that you can take is the taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's a reminder for ourselves as we prepare these material things to always be in that state of taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the most important thing. We mentioned about ihram. We said that ihram is not clothing. Sometimes people think that ihram is the white clothing that men wear. Yes, that is a garment of ihram, but that's not ihram. Ihram is a state that you're in. Like when you do wudu, you're in the state of purity, right? When you do ghusl, you're in a state of purity. Ihram is like it's like a state of being that you're in, okay? And it's there to obviously venerate the haram around Mecca. We'll talk about the miqat. That it's now, how do you enter into the state of ihram? This is important. The men, they wear the garments. The men, they wear garments. One must have intention for Hajj or Umrah or both. And then a person recites talbiyah. We're going to go over each one of them, inshallah. So this is just a general overview, right? I just need everyone to keep in mind that ihram is a state. It's not just the clothing. We talked about this last week. The last thing that we talked about last week was the miqat. We mentioned that a person going into Makkah to perform Hajj and Umrah, they are not allowed to cross this area over here, right? Not the exact points, but the boundary. You do not cross this boundary except that you are in a state of ihram. Okay. And we mentioned, generally speaking, people come from America, they'll generally come through here to go to Jeddah, usually, right here or this area, usually where we come from. So these are just an idea just to get the view of a miqat, because I'm sure if you've been on a plane going for Umrah, or you may hear that they announce we're passing the miqat, for example, and people get to say, so what is that? It's like an area through here. So people coming from this direction, basically all directions. And this was set by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and this is done out of veneration for this area. Okay, so Makkah and its surrounding area is called Al-Haram, a sacred area, and this is within they call it the Hill, which is right outside. But anyways, the point is that you do not cross these boundaries except in the state of Ihram. So this is where we stopped last week, and now we'll begin with our actual state of doing Umrah and Hajj. Remember, we're talking about Tamattu' here, because Tamattu' is the most commonly done one. Tamattu' involves doing Umrah, getting out of the state of Umrah, and then getting into Ihram, doing Hajj, right? So that's what Tamattu' is. So obviously, just put in your mind as if you're going to Mecca to do Umrah first, right? Because to do Tamattu', you're going to do Umrah, then you're going to get out of the state of Umrah. So now, obviously, depending on your package, depending on what you book, you'll either go to Medina first or you'll go to Mecca first, right? Some groups, they'll go to Medina first, they spend some time in Medina, and then right before Hajj, maybe a couple of days before, they'll come to Mecca. And some groups are the opposite. They'll go to Mecca first, and after Hajj, they'll go to Medina. So let's just pretend we're going to Mecca first. We'll talk about going to Medina first a little bit later. So put in your mind that you're going to Mecca. So now when you're going to Mecca, as we mentioned, you need to get into the state of ihram, right? You can enter into ihram from your house, your original airport, connecting airport, or on the plane. Now, you can, but no one does get into the state of ihram from your home, right? Because it's just not the thing that you do, right? You usually wear ihram the closer you are to the miqat. So even though you can from your home, it's not advisable, and I don't think anyone does that really. When you're getting on the plane, you're wearing your regular clothes, right? So then your original airport, let's just say you're flying from, I don't know, Philadelphia, right? You can if you want to, but again, most people don't do that, right? Connecting airport or on the plane. This I put in bold because this is a time where men especially, they find it convenient to change into the clothing of ihram, right? As we're going to talk about, the men, they remove all articles of clothing and they wear the two ihram garments. Usually, the connecting airport is the most convenient for a person. So let's just say you're flying from Philly to Qatar, Qatar to Jeddah, right? Most people, they find it convenient in that connecting time. When you get out, you have, maybe if you have time, maybe 4 or 5 hours, you just go to the bathroom and then you change your clothes, because on the plane it gets difficult. It gets difficult because there's a lot of people that want to change, especially during Hajj time, right? And if they start announcing on the plane that we're going to pass the miqat boundary within half an hour, there's like a bum rush to the bathroom. So it gets very difficult. So I would say the most convenient time to wear your garment, it doesn't mean you're in the state of ihram. We're just talking about just changing your clothes. Because to get into the state, we mentioned three things. For men wearing the garment, to have the intention, and to recite the talbiyah, right? So if you just wear the garment, you are not in a state of ihram. But you do need to change your garment for men, right? So I put this in bold because this is the most convenient. If you're flying, an example from Philly to Qatar, Qatar to Jeddah, for example, you're going during that connection time. The best thing to do is to wear your ihram garments in the connecting airport, right? You can do it on the plane if you want to, but again, just keep in mind it gets a little more challenging to do so. And it's a reminder if you're going for Umrah and Hajj to pack your ihram garments in your carry-on, not in your luggage, so you're able to access it and do that. That's actually something to keep in mind. Okay, so that's one. So now, before entering into the state of ihram, you want to clip your nails, you want to trim your hair. You don't have to, but the reason I'm mentioning that is because once you get into a state of ihram, you're not allowed to clip your nails, you're not allowed to trim your hair. So whatever you want to do at home, before you get on the plane, you just clip your nails, trim your hair, do whatever you have to do before going to the airport. The night before your flight, for example, just take care of that before entering into the state of ihram. The third is to perform wudu. Obviously, ghusl is sunnah. The Prophet ﷺ, before getting into the state of ihram, he used to do ghusl. But I'm just being practical here. It's difficult. I mean, where are you going to do it in the airport, right? So that's why I just wrote perform wudu, so just so you get into a state of purity. However, if you want to do ghusl from home, then perhaps you could get rewarded for it because you have good intention. Allahu a'lam, Allah knows best. Even though there's a bit of a journey in between, but Allah knows best. Maybe you could get rewarded for that. So if you can do ghusl from home is good. But at the very least, when you're connecting airport or on the plane, just get into a state of tahara to do wudu. Okay. For men now, you have to remove all articles of clothing, meaning everything that you're wearing, you take it off and you wear the two ihram garments. We all know what the two ihram garments are. You have one garment on the top and one garment on the bottom. There's no other articles of clothing that you are wearing. Women remain in their regular clothing. There is no special clothing for women in the state of ihram. Only men, they get into the state of the clothing. Again, garments can be worn at home, original airport, connecting airport, or on the plane. Again, I bolded it because it's easier to do that in the connecting airport or on the plane. So you make sure that your nails are trimmed, your hair is trimmed, you do wudu, you remove all articles of clothing for men, and then it's recommended, it's narrated by Aisha radiallahu anha that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he used to apply perfume on his even on his clothing of ihram. Now this is before you make your intention to get into a state of ihram. Because once you get into the intention, as we'll take, you're not allowed to apply perfume. So what is the purpose of doing it before? Well, that way the fragrance remains, right? And there's some good smell because you probably will be wearing that article of clothing for some time. And obviously you're going to get tired, dusty, disheveled. So having some perfume beforehand is something recommended. It's not mandatory. So if you're able to do so, then perhaps you can do that. You apply some perfume. Now, obviously, if you're flying, sometimes you can't carry that much liquid. So maybe at home you can just put some perfume on your ihram clothing if you want. That's something that you can think about doing before entering into the state of ihram, of course. Perform two rak'ah. This is a sunnah. The Prophet ﷺ used to perform two rak'at after entering into the state of, or I mean, sorry, right before entering into the state of ihram. So he used to wear get pure, do the wudu or ghusl, wear the articles of clothing, and then perform two rak'at sunnah. Obviously, this is for both men and women. So obviously, if you're in the connecting airport, you can perform the salah wherever you're able to, right? Especially if you're going to like Qatar and Dubai and these stops, they usually have musallas in the airport. So you can find a place to pray and you can pray the two rakat. But however, let's just say you change on the plane. If you change on the plane, you're allowed to perform the salah sitting down, especially the sunnah. On the plane, there's no issue with that, right? So even if you change on the plane and you want to perform the two rakat, you can perform these two rakat on the plane, and this is a sunnah. If you forget to do it, don't worry, your ihram is still fine, but it's not mandatory. This is sunnah, it's recommended, highly recommended. It's something that we should do, right? So let's just review. So you clip your nails, trim hair, you got into a state of purity. For men, you remove articles of clothing. Women, you remain in your clothing, no problem. It's recommended to apply perfume beforehand, and then you perform the 2 rakat sunnah. If you're in the connecting airport, you can do it in any of the musallas at the airport, or anywhere in the airport for that matter. And if you're on the plane, you can perform the 2 rakat in your seat, no issues with that. Once you've done that, now you want to make your intention for Umrah and say the talbiyah. This is necessary to enter into the state of Ihram. Usually on the plane, they make an announcement that we're going to pass the miqat boundary. And so you can make your intention, right? They give you ample time, so don't worry about it. Um, for those that have been, you know. So as soon as they make that announcement, then you make your intention for Umrah. Intention for Umrah is just in your heart. You don't necessarily have to say anything on your tongue, but you know in your heart that you're going to perform Umrah. But we'll mention that on the next slide. The Prophet ﷺ did used to say something that we'll mention, and you say the talbiyah. This is necessary. So I tried bolding or keeping some of the writings in bold just to show us what is recommended and what is necessary. This is necessary. As soon as you wear the garments for men, the women they're in their regular clothing, you make intention, both men and women, and you say the talbiyah, one is now in the state of ihram. And all ihram restrictions apply, and we'll talk about the restrictions. Okay. So again, just to summarize this slide, just pretend you're going to Makkah first. You're on the plane, for example, or you're on your connecting airport, the men, you wear your garments, you did wudu, you perform 2 rakat, you're on the plane now going towards Jeddah, really, not Makkah, because you're going to land in Jeddah first. And then once you're there on the plane and they make that announcement that you're coming close to miqat time, or even before, a little bit beforehand is fine as well. You make that intention for Umrah and you say the talbiyah. This is necessary. As soon as you say this, you are now officially in the state of ihram, and all the restrictions apply. Any questions about this slide? Everything's clear. Okay, so these are a couple of phrases that is narrated on the Prophet ﷺ. The first one is Labbaik Allahumma Umrah, is narrated that he ﷺ said this when he was going to make Umrah. Labbaik Allahumma Umrah. Labbaik, there's different translations for it. Here I am, O Allah, for Umrah. So if you say this, is something good. And of course, the second one is the famous talbiyah that we all know. لبيك اللهم لبيك لبيك لا شريك لك لبيك إن الحمد والنعمة لك والملك La sharika lak. The translations here on the bottom. Here I am, O Allah, here I am. You have no partner, here I am. Indeed, all praise and blessings belong to you, and the dominion belongs to you. You have no partner. And subhanAllah, this emphasizes the tawheed. You're constantly reminding yourself of Allah and Allah alone, right? And this should help a person keep the taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why the scholars they say it's recommended. The Prophet ﷺ, when he used to enter into the state of ihram, he used to constantly, until he started the Umrah, he used to constantly keep saying the talbiyah, keep saying the talbiyah. So even on the plane, at this moment, the best form of dhikr that you can do is to say the talbiyah as much as you possibly can, right? And try to be cognizant as you're saying it. If you're cognizant, inshallah, it helps keep the taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in your heart. And obviously, any challenges and difficulties you face, if you're remembering Allah's name, it helps you. It helps you remember Allah, and in those moments, so you don't get frustrated with anything that may come up in your journey, right? So, labbaik Allahumma umrah, the first one has been narrated on the Prophet ﷺ. He said that, and the second one is the famous talbiyah. So once you make your intention, you say this, and for the men, you're wearing a cloth, you're officially in the state of ihram. Entering into the state of ihram from Medina. So the first one was on the plane to Mecca. So now let's just say you're on a group that's going to Medina first. You're going to Medina, you'll spend some time in Medina, and then you'll come to Mecca. So if you're going to from here to Medina or any place to Medina, there is no entering into the state of ihram. To go to Medina, there is no ihram, right? You go to Medina dressed normally in a normal state, there is no ihram. Ihram applies to the haram, Makkah alone. So there is no entering into the state of ihram when going to Medina. So you don't have to worry about wearing your clothes and doing all of this on the plane or connecting airport. None of this applies. Okay, but now you're in Medina and the time for you to go to Makkah has come. You have to leave your hotel in Medina and you're going to board the bus or the train or the taxi or whatever to go to Makkah. So what do? The same thing, except you do it from your hotel. right? So you clip your nails, trim your hair before entering into the state of ihram. You could do that from your hotel room. That's easier. Take ghusl over here. I specifically wrote ghusl because you're going to be in a hotel room, right? Not in an airport. So it's sunnah to do ghusl before entering into the state of ihram. Um, it's recommended again to apply perfume before entering into the state of ihram. For men, again, remove all articles of clothing and wear the two ihram garments. Women remain in their regular clothing. You perform 2 rak'at. You can do this in your hotel room, or you can go to Masjid al-Nabawi and you perform 2 rak'at there. That's probably better, of course. Um, and then you make your intention for Umrah and you say the talbiyah, right? So obviously in Medina, it'll be a lot more. I'll just get your question after I finish the slide. So it's a lot more comfortable in Medina. You're going to be in your hotel room, so there's no issue with that. If your transport stops at the miqat, just to go back, if you're coming from Medina, you're going to pass this area, Dhul Hulayfa. Dhul Hulayfa. This is where the Prophet ﷺ stopped to enter into the state of Ihram. So if your transport stops at that point, right, especially if you're taking a bus and taxi, they usually stop. Then you can make your intention and say talbiyah and perform 2 rak'at at the miqat. The miqat has a masjid over there. In fact, they even have a shower facility and everything, right? But in our case, you're going to prepare yourself from your hotel room. If it stops at the miqat, you can get out. You'll see everyone going towards a very large white masjid over there. You perform 2 rak'at over there. Alhamdulillah, that's great. Now let's just say your transport does not stop. It's just passing by. You're on a train, for example, or the bus that's not stopping. Then there's no issue. You can make your intention and say talbiyah right before passing through the miqat, and you can pray 2 rak'at sitting the same way you would have done on the plane. Okay, so if let's just say bus usually stops, and car is going to stop usually, but let's just say you're on the train. The train now it does not stop. The train between Medina and Mecca doesn't stop; it just goes direct. What the train does tell you is, as it's getting close to the miqat, they announce that we're about to pass the miqat, so you can make your intention. In fact, they even say labbaik Allahumma labbaik on the train. So at that point, you've already prepared yourself from your hotel room, right? For men, you wore the garments. For women, you're in your regular clothing. As soon as they make that announcement, you just make your intention and you start saying labbaik Allahumma labbaik, and you're good. So if it stops, you can perform 2 rak'at there. Again, if your group leader or whoever you're going with tells you that you're going by bus, then most probably you're going to stop, and you can clarify. If they tell you you're going to stop, just wait to perform 2 rak'at over there, because that's where the Prophet used to, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, prayed his 2 rak'at. But if it's not going to stop, you're taking the train for whatever reason, if some groups go by train, then you can perform 2 rak'at, prepare yourself in the hotel room. As your train is passing by, just like you would have done on the plane, you just make your intention. And if you haven't prayed 2 rak'at, you can pray 2 rak'at sitting down, no issue there. So we have two questions, one over there, one over here. First.
I was gonna ask, do you need to be in the garments when performing 2 rakah?
You should be. You should wear the garments first. That's what the Prophet said. He wore the he did wudu. I mean, he did ghusl. He wore the garments, prayed 2 rak'at, made intention, and then he left. Yeah.
Slide.
That's
I just wanted to mention, if you're taking the train from Medina, there's actually, they have facilities at the train station as well. If you want to put your ihram over there and so on, so they have a place for that.
perfect. That's good to know. So if you're taking the train, they have facilities over
Obviously,
there.
place to,
You perform, yes, they have salah and stuff over there. That's good to know.
We're going from Medina to Makkah. Can you do 2 rakats sunnah at the hotel and talbiyah there, or do you have to wait till you get to the Prophet?
Yeah, so but you can because it's close enough, but it's always better to do it near the miqat. The 2 rak'at you can do it at the hotel if you feel like it's more comfortable. You can do it there. You can do it at Masjid Nabawi too. There's no problem with that. But for the intention at talbiyah, it's probably better just to wait at the miqat because that's what it's designated for. But if you do it from your hotel room, there's no issue, no problem with that. It's still valid. Yeah. Did anybody have a question? No. Okay. All right. So that was going into the state of Ihram as if you're going to Mecca, and now from Medina to Mecca. So now, whichever direction you're coming from, you're heading towards Mecca right now. Whether you're on the plane, uh, usually, obviously, a plane doesn't fly to Mecca, a plane flies to Jeddah, and then from Jeddah, you take some ride into Mecca. So now you're going into Mecca from either Medina or Mecca. These are some of the guidelines for men, first of all. Number one, men cannot cover the head or face. So you cannot wear this, you cannot wear any other baseball caps or anything of that nature. Neither do you cover your face, right? Uh, you can take shade under an umbrella, but that doesn't count as a head covering, right? So obviously it's hot, and if you want to protect yourself from the sun, you can wear shade. Or if you go under a building, for example, that's not covering your head, right? That's just taking shade. There's no issue with that. But generally speaking, you don't wear this or you don't wear cap. Generally speaking, you cannot cover face. Now, there are exceptions. The most common question that come up is the mask, for example. Can you wear the mask? If you feel that it's a necessity, out of necessity, person can, but perhaps is better. But let's just say you just keep it like this, and then sometime when it gets powdered, you pick it up. It's fine as well. But if you're feeling sick, for example, then perhaps you should wear it. So I'll leave that judgment up to you, right? But generally speaking, the general rule is that the face is not covered and the head is not covered. Um, then you have wearing sewn clothes in a normal manner. Now, some people they think that you cannot wear sewn clothes at all. So drawstring bag they think you cannot wear. They think belt you cannot wear. That's incorrect, right? Or sandals I cannot wear, but sandals are gonna be stitched. No, what for men, what it means to not wear sewn clothes is to wear it in a normal manner. So you're wearing one piece garment, you're wearing the other piece garment on the ground. Your sandals are going to be stitched. That's perfectly fine. Now let's just say I have a jacket with me. How do we normally wear a jacket? You put your right hand in the right sleeve, left hand in left sleeve, and you wearing it, right? That is not allowed. But let's just say you're cold now, and you take your jacket and you put it over you as a blanket. You don't put your hands inside the sleeves. That is not how you normally wear a jacket. That's not how you normally wear a jacket. Normally, you wear it with your hands in the sleeves. So if you just put your jacket, you drape it over your shoulders without putting your hands in the sleeves, that is fine, right? Because and the reason I mention that is sometimes you'll get cold. I don't know, in the tent or in the hotel, something could happen where you're feeling cold. Cold. You can take a jacket, you can take a hoodie, and you can drape it over you like a blanket, for example. There's nothing wrong with that, right? Even a t-shirt, or let's just say you have a hoodie, and some people they wrap out the jacket or hoodie around their waist. There's nothing wrong with that, right? What you can't do is you're not allowed to wear it in a normal, regular manner. Okay, so you can't take your jacket, you can't take your shirt and put your hands in the sleeves and wear it. If you drape yourself with your jacket or your hoodie or any article of clothing that in a way that you normally don't wear, that is fine and that won't violate your ihram. Does that make sense? Um, the third thing is men they must wear sandals slash slippers that leave the ankles uncovered. Meaning that the idea is that your ankles have to be uncovered as the Prophet ﷺ instructed. The ankles should not be covered. I'll show you a couple of pictures of that in a second. Men, you can wear glasses, obviously. You need to see. You can wear sunglasses, no problem. You can wear watches, no issue with that. You can have a drawstring bag on your back, no issue with that. If you have a ring, you can wear a ring. None of these are prohibited, right? It's just an article of clothing that are, right? But generally speaking, I would advise just to be as light as possible because the idea in the state of Ihram is to be in a natural state, right? Is to be in a natural state where you're humble in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So let's just say this ring, it's probably a better idea not to wear it, right? Or unless you're concerned for safety or something. Watch, okay, you need to somehow keep track of time. But the idea is try to be as simple as possible. Try to be as simple as possible with just the necessities that you need. The last one is very important. Some people don't know. You can change your ihram garments while in the state of ihram. That's why I mentioned it's good to have perhaps two pairs because sometimes, especially during Hajj, you'll be wearing the ihram garments for days at a time. They could get dirty, right? You're gonna be using restrooms, for example. Things happen, right? Blood could go on it, right? There's different things that could happen. You're allowed to change one article and change it, put on another piece. You can change the top or another top. You can change the bottom or another bottom, or you can change both pieces. There's no issue with that, inshallah, right? There's no issue with that. Any questions for these guidelines for men?
Is that like a backpack is fine, right?
Yeah, backpack is fine. Backpack is fine. No issue with that. Any other questions? Use the raise your hand.
I was gonna ask the same.
Oh, same.
Why drawstring in particular?
Oh no, I just wrote drawstring because I just find it to be the most convenient backpack. You don't want to lug around a big backpack, honestly, because you're gonna be moving a lot during Umrah and Hajj, especially during Umrah, you're doing tawaf, even Hajj, you're doing tawaf, you're going to Salah Sa'i. It's hard to be carrying something heavy. Just so drawstring bag is like the most lightweight bag I can think of. But if you have like those fanny packs people wear, that's fine. Sometimes I've seen those belts that kind of come across, that's fine as well. All of this stuff is fine, whatever is convenient for you. Okay, so these are a couple of pictures over here of permissible and impermissible footwear for men. The idea is that your ankles should be uncovered. These are just examples. Examples. So this is permissible. Obviously, the ankle is completely uncovered. This is permissible. The ankle is completely uncovered. This will be impermissible because this is completely the opposite. It covers everything. And this is perhaps impermissible because it kind of covers a part of the ankle. You just want to stay clear of any doubt, right? For men especially. So anything like this or like that is perfectly fine. You have those Adidas slippers, Nike slippers, different sort of slippers. You can find cheap slippers over there too. But again, the idea is something should be comfortable. Something should be comfortable. It doesn't cover the ankles yet.
So there are some sandals which have like a strap at the back, like you go over the back of your ankle.
Yeah, I would say to avoid it. I would just say avoid it. It's better to avoid.
Yeah.
It's better to avoid. You want to be on the safe side because once you go in there, there is like difference of opinion among scholars. Some scholars say, okay, it's just a strap. Some people say, no, it still falls. You want to be as avoiding controversy as much as possible. Try to stick with something like these, inshallah, is better. Yeah.
So when you're going to sit Ihram and you're like changing your garments, you should put this on like at the same time as the
Yes.
plane or
Yeah.
bus, wherever it is.
Yeah. So as you're changing into the garments, I should have wrote that actually. You would change it to the proper footwear as well, because once you enter into State of Ihram, you should be in the proper footwear as you're entering into State of Ihram. That's a good point. I'll add that to the slides later. Okay, that's for men, obviously. Now we're talking about women, guidelines for women. Women wear their regular clothes. There is no special, specific garments for clothes. I remember one person was telling me that they thought that women should wear white abayas or something or scarves. You don't have to wear anything color or anything like that. Whatever you regularly normally are wearing, you just stick with that, inshallah. Women, they can wear hats. This is different. Women are allowed to wear hats, right? So especially if it's sunny, I've seen some people that wear like those hats that kind of cover around. That's perfectly fine. Women could wear glasses, obviously that's fine. Sunglasses, watches, etc. The same thing. Socks and normal footwear are allowed. So whether it covers ankles, it's perfectly fine. There's no issue with the footwear for women. So when it comes to clothing, it's relatively lax. The only area that Ihram has some restriction is that woman cannot cover the face with a cloth touching the face. Again, we talked about masks, but that's a different issue altogether. If there's a necessity, if there's somebody's feeling sick, but now we're talking about if a woman, for example, wears niqab, right? Generally speaking, during ihram, the saying of the Prophet ﷺ is not to cover the face. However, with cloth touching the face, there is narrations, and this is for women that wear niqab in particular, of Aisha radiallahu anha, for example, that she when obviously at that time it wasn't as crowded as it is now, but she said that when other men used to come close by her, she used to pick up a garment like this and she used to cover her face without making it touch her face, right? So based on that, I have seen, especially women that wear niqab, what they can do is that they have like some sort of like headwear that kind of extends out, and there's like a screen over here, so it's like covering the face but not like touching the face. So a woman who wears niqab, they want to do that, that's fine as well. But the idea is that while in the state of ihram, you don't have anything that's touching the face, right? So if someone has like a hat or something like a cloth they pick up, or they have something on the headwear that's draped over without directly touching, there's nothing wrong with that. Okay, yeah.
Is there like a specific reason why you can't have cloth?
Very good. So the scholars, they say the most specific reason is that perhaps you want to be in a state of complete natural like submissiveness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they say a lot of Hajj is symbolic to resurrection. When a person gets resurrected, they'll be completely bare, coming in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the most natural of ways, the way they were created, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, the way we created you, that's the way that we'll return you, right? So it's symbolic that you want to remain as simple. Obviously, that's why men, they wear the bare minimum clothing, just two pieces of garment. The women, obviously, to cover, they keep their normal clothes, but there's still a level of trying to remain as natural, simple as possible. It's supposed to cause a person to reflect reflect on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And not think about, worldly affairs, not have these lusts and desires and so on and so forth, but really try and think about the day of resurrection, think of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, focus on worship, focus on that, and be in a complete state of submissiveness. If this wasn't there, then obviously we would see the way we see in normal lives. The wealthy will be dressed with wearing wealthy clothes, the poor will be wearing poor clothes. There'll be massive variation in people's clothing. This is to put everybody in one state, that you're going to leave the dunya in one state, you're going to be resurrected in one state uniform. Make sense? Any questions? Okay.
About socks wearing for men,
Men, no. Men don't wear socks, yeah.
not
Men.
anything below ankle, no.
It's below ankle. That's a good question. I'll have to get back to you on that. But as far as I know, the scholars say not to wear. There's also some. Oh no, he did say you can wear socks below ankle. I'll get back to you on that. I'll get back to you on that. Yeah, I'll get back. I don't want to say something that just remind me next week, inshallah. Now, so we talked about men and we talked about women. Now we have general ihram prohibitions for both men and women. Applying perfume, right? Men do not apply perfume, neither do women, right? Women, they can wear regular clothes, but there is no applying perfume. Likewise, men in the state of ihram, there is no applying perfume. I mentioned avoided scented deodorant, soap, shampoo, lotion, cream, etc. Why? This is an area that the scholars differ. Okay, the scholars, they differ. You'll read different fatwas from different scholars. Some scholars will say you're not supposed to wear anything scented. So scented deodorant, for example, scented soap, scented shampoo, lotion, cream, they serve the same purpose. They give off a scent, right? So they say that you should avoid it. There's some scholars that say, okay, this is an exception because they say the purpose of deodorant, the purpose of soap, the purpose of shampoo, lotion, cream is not necessarily to give a scent, but it's to clean. So some scholars will allow it. The best thing is just to avoid that because it's a doubtful area. Some scholars allow it, some scholars don't. And at the end of the day, the reality is they do give off scent, right? Whether the purpose or not, they give off a level of scent on your hair. It's there for fragrance, right? There's a reason why they put, those different pink berry and this berry and all these type of stuff in the shampoo. Why? You want to smell good, right? After you come out of the shower. So it's better to avoid. Now, can you buy unscented deodorant? Yeah, they have unscented deodorant in the marketplace. They have unscented soap in the marketplace. They have unscented shampoos in the market. They have all that available, right? It's there if you actually want, inshallah. So that shouldn't be a problem, right? So I would say if you're going for Hajj and Umrah, just avoid that altogether and just pack some unscented stuff with you. It's better. It's better just to avoid doubtful areas, right? And one thing though is another thing to mention is if you're in a group, you'll see different people do different things, right? So some people perhaps will take the fatwa that's allowed. They'll say, no, I'm not putting perfume, I'm just doing soap. You don't need to argue back and forth. Class, if somebody takes that opinion, that's their call. And if you don't want to take that opinion, that's your call. There's no need to argue. Inshallah, there's still validity in both positions. I just mentioned that it's better just to avoid it altogether because it's a doubtful area. And you want to do Hajj and Umrah, you're going there maybe once or in your lifetime, or maybe twice if Allah allows it. So you want to be as clear and away from doubt as much as possible. Removing hair from any part of the body. Now, what does this mean? It means that you cannot, grab your hair, pluck it. You cannot shave, you cannot trim, so on and so forth. Now, accidentally, if you are sleeping and you wake up and you find hair on your pillow, there's no issue with that, right? That's obviously beyond your control. If you just randomly go like this and a piece of hair falls out, there's no issue with that, right? What you shouldn't do is just actively sit there, pulling your beard if you have beard, or pulling your hair and stuff like that. No, you shouldn't do that. But naturally hair falls out. There is no issue with hair naturally falling out, or even sometimes accidentally, if you come out of the shower, for example, and you want to, dry your hair, right? So you take the towel and you go like this a little bit, you're gonna find hair on the towel. There's nothing wrong with that. What it's meant is not to purposefully pluck your hair out. So if you're sitting there pulling your hair out, if you're shaving, if you're trimming, or even if a person has a beard, you should avoid just for no reason going like this. That should be avoided. But anything that comes out as you're sleeping, you come out of the shower, you kind of dry your hair a little bit, you find hair, this stuff is fine. You don't have to worry about it. Okay. Clipping nails. Obviously, that's something you want to avoid during the state of ihram, right? You do not clip nails while in the state of ihram. Relations with spouse and anything leading to it as well is something that you avoid while in the state of ihram. Any questions? Yeah.
Like at the hotels in Makkah, for example, do they provide soap and shampoo that's unscented?
Unscented, I've seen some hotels do, and I've seen some hotels don't. So it's probably a better idea just to pack it with you. Better idea to pack it with you. But they do have it in the stores, by the way. If you go to like Bin Dawood, or that's like a grocery store there, you'll find it. They have it in the stores, anyways. Some hotels do, some hotels don't. So it's probably a better idea just to take it with you. Again, it's just better to avoid altogether. So, any other questions? Okay. So now we're looking at Umrah at a glance, right? Umrah at a glance. This is Umrah summarized. We'll go through the steps of Umrah. Umrah has four main steps. First one is to enter into the state of Ihram, which we've already done. We've talked about, right? Second is to do tawaf. We'll talk about that. Do sa'i, meaning going between the Mount Safa and Marwa. And lastly, you shave slash trim your hair. So this is Umrah at a glance. That's why Umrah usually it could take between 2 hours if there's no crowd, or 4 or 5 hours. It's not days. For those that haven't been to Umrah, Umrah doesn't take days, or Umrah it's a matter of hours. Hajj is a matter of days. So remember, we're doing tamattu, right? To do tamattu, you're doing Umrah first, and then you do Hajj. So those that are not going for Hajj and you're going for Umrah, you can just pay attention to this. Yeah.
Two nafil prayers missing you do after the
Yes, so that's not the reason I didn't. It's not like a pillar, like element of it.
Oh,
These are just the main pillars of it, right? There are recommended, and yeah, I know so the scholar says wajib, but it's not a pillar, right? So these are the four like main pillars. If any of these are missing, then the umrah is incomplete, right? Everything else doesn't invalidate the umrah. Okay, so this is at a glance. Now let's start with tawaf. So we already did ihram, right? We're good with ihram. Now you're entered into Mecca, whether you came from Medina or whether you came from America straight. So you're going for tawaf. Number one, wudu is necessary for tawaf. It's necessary. You must be in a state of purity while you're doing tawaf. If you happen to lose wudu, you can go do your wudu and you're allowed to resume where you left off. You don't have to restart from the beginning. Okay. But wudu is necessary for tawaf. That's something to keep in mind. Okay. Another, the second one, ittiba'. Ittiba' is sunnah. What is ittiba'? Uncovering the right shoulder for the duration of tawaf. If you've seen images, if you haven't been, you'll see that. And they uncover the right shoulder. So basically, you take the ihram and you put it over it like this. You can just Google the images for Umrah and you'll see that the right shoulder is uncovered. If you type in ittiba' on Google, you'll see it. This is a sunnah. So if you accidentally forgot, right? Don't worry, the tawaf is fine. There's nothing wrong with the tawaf, right? If you're going there after three, you suddenly see everybody's uncovered. Oh, wait, I should have uncovered. Or what happened to me once, actually, for some reason I forgot and somebody reminded me, hey, you're supposed to keep your thing uncovered, and you take it off. It's fine. This is a sunnah. It's not mandatory, but it's something that you should, keep in mind. Usually you'll notice people, their right shoulder is uncovered, so you will be uncovered. This is a sunnah for tawaf, the entire duration of tawaf from beginning to end. The Kaaba should be on your left during tawaf. I'll show an image of that. So as you're going around, the Kaaba should always be on your left-hand side. If hypothetically you're going the other way, then you're doing it the wrong way. It's not gonna happen because everyone's going. Everyone's going, so it's not gonna happen. Yeah. I would hope not. Yeah. Yeah. But some people they go not for tawaf, but they're trying to exit, they're trying to go to a different gate. So you have some people going this way, some people going that way. But the vast 95% of people are going one way. So just follow the flow, inshallah. You start tawaf from the black stone. Okay, the Kaaba has four corners. You're gonna go to the corner that has a black stone. How do you know where it is for those going for the first time? Across the black stone on the wall of the Masjid al-Haram, there's like a green light. That green light indicates that opposite there is the black stone, right? So those that have never been, you as soon as you enter into the Mataf area, you're just gonna see a sea of people. Just look out for a green light. Your job is to get to the green light, and then you start your round from the green light. If you enter on the other side and you go all the way to the other side to start the tawaf, that is not a round of tawaf. You haven't started yet. You can only start after you get to that green light, which is the black stone. You start from there, right? So even though you're doing 7 rounds, sometimes it ends up being 9 rounds because you're going this way, you're going that way, because of you may enter from that side, you may enter from that side. Inshallah, you get rewarded for everything. But you try to find the black stone, find the green light, and you start from there. So the green light is on the wall of the masjid opposite the Kaaba to indicate the starting point. When beginning tawaf, is recommended to raise your hand toward the black stone. You could just raise it. And then you say, Bismillah, Allahu Akbar, Bismillah, Allahu Akbar. This is recommended. It's recommended to say Bismillah, in the name of Allah, Allahu Akbar. You praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is recommended. You're going to hear everyone saying it anyway, so it's fine, inshallah. So it's recommended to say that from the black stone. One thing I do want to point out, because I've been on Umrah groups where some people are very particular, they want to be exactly in line with the black stone. It's very difficult to be exactly measured, right? So if you're a little bit before, you're a little bit after, it's not that big of a deal. Right? The idea is you're around that area and you point out, right? And you say Bismillah, Allahu, then you start. Your hand is obviously facing towards the black stone, right? Any questions? This is a very blurry image, but the idea is that this is the black stone over here. You're going to start and you go in that direction, right? Until you do 7 in that direction. This is the Maqam Ibrahim. This is that way to go to Zamzam, Safa. This is the Yemeni corner. As we'll talk about that, the Yemeni corner is the corner before black stone. And the reason why this is pointed out is there's a dua that's recommended to recite over here as you're going here. But the idea is that the Kaaba will always be on your left. Okay, continuing on for tawaf, another sunnah for men is to do ramal. Ramal is to walk a little bit quickly. Walk a little bit quickly for the first 3 rounds. Prophet ﷺ is narrated that he used to walk a little quickly during the first 3 rounds, almost kind of like jogging, but not totally jogging. It's like to walk quickly. So ittiba', you keep your shoulder uncovered for the entire tawaf. For ramal, it's only the first 3. Walking quickly is only for the first 3 rounds of tawaf. However, if it is too crowded, then walk normally until you find an opening and walk briskly. If it's crowded, you shouldn't force yourself just to follow the sunnah. That sunnah falls off because you practice what is possible for you. If it's out of possibility, then you don't do it. So don't make the mistake of trying to push people just to walk quickly. It's not mandatory. This is recommended. If you find an opening, great, you can walk quickly, right? This is also a time where sometimes people end up getting lost because sometimes men, they will walk quickly and the woman fall behind. So that's also something to consider. Try and make sure you guys are together, especially if it's the first time a person's going. You don't want to get lost. So if you sacrifice walking quickly to kind of stay with your group, that's also fine. If it's first time and you don't want to get lost, that's also issue. It's not mandatory. But again, it's a sunnah that perhaps you should try and do. When beginning each round of tawaf and completing the 7th round, it is recommended to raise your hand towards the black stone and say the takbir. Right, so we mentioned as you start, you raise your hand, you say Bismillah Allahu Akbar. Every time you come over there, you do the same thing, Bismillah Allahu Akbar, and then you do another round. Then you come back again, Bismillah Allahu Akbar. For each one of the rounds, you say Bismillah Allahu Akbar until you come to it for the final time as well. Now, during tawaf, between the Yemeni corner and the black stone, it is recommended to recite رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. That's a dua that we all know. Again, when do you recite that? Between the corner before the black stone corner. That's called Rukn al-Yamani. So as you see the green light, before you get to the green light, that corner, between that corner and the black stone corner, is recommended to recite رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. This is recommended. Again, if you forget, it's not an issue. Yeah.
When you your lap and you're back at the starting point, do you have to stop and raise your hands, or can you still be?
You could still be going. Actually, it's probably better not to completely stop. You can hold up the people. You're like kind of walking, you slow down a little bit, you face it, and you keep going. You don't have to stop like on point.
Okay, so when you're raising, like, what are you planning to be him? You just raise both
Yeah,
hands up in
just
the air,
so you can raise both hands or 2 hands. There's some scholars say both hands, some scholars say 1 hand is fine.
face the black stone.
Yeah, so you're facing the black stone completely. So you make sure the palms are like facing the black stone. So it's not dua, it's facing the black stone. Sorry for that. So if you have the black stone right there, if you raise 1 hand towards it, it's perfectly fine. And some people raise 2 hands. Both is fine. It's not a major thing. But the idea is that it should be facing the black stone to the best of your ability. Any other questions about this? Another thing that could happen as you're doing tawaf, the time for salah could come in the middle of your tawaf, right? So let's just say you're going between Maghrib and Isha, all of a sudden adhan for Isha comes and now they're trying to make everyone line up. There's nothing wrong with that. You just pray wherever you're at. Usually the woman, you're gonna have to go a little bit back. The men, they have to find some space to pray. You pray in Jama'ah, no problem. Just keep track of which round you're on. And then after Salah, just continue where you left off. So if you finish 3.5, for example, and then you try your best to remember at which point you stopped, and then you just continue from that 3.5 round, and you just continue, inshallah, right?
Do you press same spot?
Yeah, usually if you're in the mataf, you're gonna end up praying. You don't have to pray in the same spot because most probably you're gonna be kind of pushed around here, there, a little bit there, especially women, they're gonna be end up going further back. So you try your best to find out where you stopped. So if you, let's just say iqama goes off or adhan goes off, rather, just look around for some sort of indicator to make you remember where I left off. Sometimes they have gate numbers. Let's just say gate number X, right? So I'm like, okay, I stopped at gate number X. After Salah, wherever I end up praying Salah, I'm going to come back to gate number X and I'm going to continue, right? So that's the best thing. You don't have to restart the round. So let's just say you stopped over there and you end up praying Salah over there, right? You try your best to get a marking point and then just continue where you left off from that round. So the salah doesn't interrupt the validity of the tawaf. During tawaf, you make as much as dua as possible. You can make dua in Arabic, in English, and do whatever language you want to do it, or whatever you're comfortable in. You just make dua, right? You can make Quranic dua, you can make dua from your own, dua from the Sunnah, whatever you possibly want to say to Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. This is the best time to so engage in dua as much as possible. One thing I do want to point out, and those that have been to Umrah or Hajj, you've seen it. There's some people that engage in doing dua very loud, doing adhkar very loud. I personally don't think that's a. I know sometimes they try to do that so the group follows, but honestly, it's better to make dua silently wide because when you raise your voice, it can really disturb people that are trying to make their own dua. So sometimes there are people they're saying Rabbana atina fid dunya, and you're trying to make a dua from your own, and you can't concentrate. Someone's raising the voice. Now, if someone's doing that, you shouldn't argue with them. Just let them do their thing. But you personally shouldn't contribute to that, right? Just keep your voice as low as possible and focus. You don't want to disturb anyone else's dua. So that's something to keep in mind. Okay, so you make dua as much as possible. Again, dua could be done in any language, any dua, Quranic dua, Sunnah dua, dua from your own, whatever you want to do. If you want to make dua while looking at something, that's fine. If you want to make dua from your mind, that's fine. All of this is perfectly valid. Again, you just make sure you're not disturbing anyone. After completing the tawaf, go behind the station, the maqam of Ibrahim, and we'll point to where that is, and perform 2 rak'ah. That's the 2 rak'ah you're talking about. It is recommended in these 2 rak'ahs to recite Surah Al-Kafirun and Surah Al-Ikhlas. The Prophet ﷺ read Qul Ya Ayyuhal Kafirun and Qul Huwallahu Ahad during these 2 rak'ahs. If it's too crowded, which most probably will be, if it's too crowded to perform salah behind the maqam Ibrahim, you can pray anywhere. There's nothing wrong. So you just find any place to pray. You don't need to squeeze yourself in the area just to pray 2 rakat. Probably better just find any place that you can perform. It's better to pray in a place that's not behind Maqam Ibrahim, where you can pray with focus, than pray in a place where you're squished and you're not really focused on the salah. Right? So if you find it very squishy, just pray anywhere else that you can find and pray the 2 rakat comfortably. And again, it's recommended to recite Surah Al-Kafirun, Surah Al-Ikhlas. Now, I didn't mention there are obviously other recommendations. Zamzam, you're gonna find Zamzam water there. You want to drink Zamzam water. You're gonna be making dua. So all these things are there, right? So these are directly related to the tawaf. Any questions about this? Yeah.
Can we just clarify, are the 2 rakats parts of the Umrah?
They are part of the Umrah, yes. It's 2 rakat for the tawaf. In fact, actually, I don't want to say it's part of the Umrah because anytime you do tawaf, even outside the Umrah, you're allowed to do nafil tawaf. We'll talk about it. You just do tawaf that has nothing to do with the Umrah. You're just wearing normal clothes, you're doing tawaf, for example. After these 2 rakat, you just do, after the tawaf, you do 2 rakat. So it's not directly correlated with the Umrah, it's more correlated with the tawaf, right? So the 2 rakat is with the tawaf. So if you forget the 2 rakat, for example, it has nothing to do with the validity of your Umrah. Your Umrah is perfectly valid, right? It doesn't affect the Umrah. However, it's connected with the tawaf. It's something that you should do after the tawaf. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
so it's not
So let's just say you forgot. Let's just say you did the tawaf. You forgot to pay 2 rakat. You went to Safa Marwa. You did that. You shaved your hair, trimmed your hair. You went to the hotel room. Your Umrah is fine. There is no penalty, no sadaqah, nothing. And if you want, you can just pray the 2 rakat. I guess as a makeup, inshallah, it's fine. So it won't affect it, right?
it's like a sort of
Yeah, it's like a sunnah, or some scholars say it's like wajib, but it's not a pillar. It's not like a pillar per se. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. If you forget, then you should perform it later when you remember it, for example. But it's not something that affects the validity of it. Yeah.
Especially when you're making tawaf, is it fine to walk in front of people who are praying? Or is it
That's a good question. If you can, but if you can't, I mean, usually actually people perform salah. Generally speaking, people that follow rules, they'll perform salah a little bit back, and they have like a line, like a security sort of tape blocking them out from you. So usually that's fine. Now you have some people that want to pray randomly everywhere. Well, then that's their fault. Honestly, they shouldn't be performing salah over there. We shouldn't do that, right? We should try and follow guidelines of designated areas where to pray. Now, if a person is praying randomly in the middle of the tawaf area, then you can't avoid that, right? And in fact, it's probably dangerous for him in the first place. So that's another issue that comes up. This is the Maqam Ibrahim, if anyone hasn't seen it before. So the idea is that you perform somewhere behind it. Obviously, when you go there, you'll see a lot of people trying to pray in an area behind it, If you don't find space behind there to pray 2 rakat, you can pray anywhere. There's no problem with that, inshallah.
We're still facing the Kaaba when you pray.
Yes, you don't face, oh, by the way, I mean, no one does that, but you don't face Maqam Ibrahim, you face the Kaaba. You're right. Any other questions related to this? I think we're getting close to Maghrib time. So we'll try to continue next week, inshallah. That's okay, inshallah. Any other questions before we wrap up? So what we have done. Inshallah, next week we'll finish up the Umrah and then the actions of Hajj, inshallah. And if we don't finish, then maybe we'll do another week. But inshallah, hopefully we can finish next week. Inshallah. Any questions? All right, then you can go off, inshallah, for these salah. Jazakumullah khair. And if you have any questions during the week, feel free to reach out to me. You have my email, you can email me, or if you see me in the masjid, you can feel free to reach out to me, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair.